Okay, episode 23, Sunset. Wow. Well, I don't know where to start, really, because I could start with anything, really. There wasn't anything that is, like, so concerning for things going forward. I mean, everything's concerning going forward, really, but I mean, we'll start with Annie, I guess, because obviously she's the big sort of character that's came back, and it was Hitch who ended up actually being with Annie there, which kind of sucks in a way, because I was hoping that after the end of last episode, that because Armin was the one to, like, you know, like, think, oh shit, that means that Annie must be back, that he would, you know, and then that would have been an interesting conversation. But I think we'll just have to wait for that for a future episode, because it's bound to happen, right? It has to come back at some point. And judging by the fact that the Zeppelins are now leaving, I don't know. I'm going to hazard a guess and say that they made it, because otherwise it's just going to be a thing of, well, Annie's just stuck on the island, and that whole thing of her getting escorted by Hitch and whatnot would have just been pretty much for nothing if she never made it there. So I'm going to hazard a guess and say that she did actually manage to get on it, because it's the only way that they're going to get there before the rumbling turns up, right? Now, the thing that's up in the air is that Annie's father actually could have taken a bullet there and died. But I think what is kind of to note is the fact that, you know, even with his sort of like gammy leg that was down to Annie in the first place, that, you know, he still clearly never gave up those sort of martial arts, that I mean, I don't know, he might be fine, but I don't know how many soldiers were there with guns, because he can get one, that's fair enough, but if he does have a fucked up leg where he can't really walk, how is he, you know, he's not going to be able to take out like 3 of them. I think I saw 3 with guns. But who knows what happened, because it literally cut when we heard the bullet. So anything could have happened. He could have taken out one and then the rest of them could have charged the other guards. Things like that could have happened. But the thing is that because they are set up in that sort of, you know, like they've got, like, you know, towers and things, I just feel like it's like the Eldians there don't really have much of a choice. So it could be a case of, like, well, Annie's just going to get there and just he's going to be dead anyway. I mean, it's going to be worse than, like, it could be a good setup for, like, Annie and her character, as in, like, who she cares about going forward, because remember, like, I mean, we got basically her whole backstory here, and the reason, like, you know, why she felt the way that she did. And that originally she cared about absolutely no one, not even her own life. She had absolutely no regard for any of it until the day of leaving, where that changed and it only became about him, her father. So it's like, if she gets there and find out that he's been shot, rather than, you know, as opposed to the other thing that would have happened, which was the rumbling came and he would have been trampled, basically squished. I mean, even just to say squished sounds not, like, because it's a massive, just, I mean, when you say they're going to literally flatten that, like, it's like I generally believe it. Like, you know, flatten the world. But that's the thing, is, like, maybe that is the reason, like, if she gets there and she finds out that he's actually been shot by a Marlian instead, then it could turn her more to, you know, to other things that she cares about. You know, like, before, even though that, I mean, because this is the thing, like, it's kind of like a betrayal on both sides between them. Obviously, she got set up by the likes of, like, Armin and whatnot, but maybe she does find sort of, like, that she does actually care for those people. Like, yeah, and, but yeah, I don't know. I also don't know if Hitch, I don't know. I doubt Hitch is going to go with her. That would be mad if Hitch went with her across the ocean to Mali or whatever, because I know, like, you know, they were kind of all right friends, but, like, I mean, it isn't gonna happen, is it? but you know, we'll wait and see. I did like the fact that she, you know, even though she has actually weakened in there, that I mean, this is the thing, is like, weak as in, because I wonder if she's like locked in there, is it just weak from the fact that she's been in there a long time, or is it actually weak in the fact that because she was literally like in a full-on battle before she hardened, she's actually still like almost in that state? That because she, like, because I almost liken it to, if she has been hardened in there, she likened it as a dream almost, right? But every time else it was just like it was like almost like blackness. So there was like kind of consciousness there, but I wonder if it's almost similarly to like the coordinate in a way, where it's like time is instant, and you know, and also like time, because it's all in the same sort of vein, isn't it? Like, time stands still there, but it also goes. So it's kind of like, I wonder if it's somewhat similar to that regard. As like, to her, almost it's like time was passing, but in terms of her body, nothing really changed. So therefore, like, it's almost as if like her body is still in that state as it was when she hardened, as to when she came out. It could be either or. It could be the fact that just because she's been in there a long time, that's what it is, and also the you know, the fact that, you know, her body still thinks it's literally just come off the back of that battle with Eren all the way back in season 1. But yeah, so she was weak. They weren't going to play the risk of her transforming, even though she was weak. And they didn't really, like, I just, you know, you didn't really get the feeling that they really wanted to fight each other anyway. But I did like the fact that Annie still has her head screwed on, and she played that sort of, like, you know, that trick of leading the footprints one way and then hiding behind the, you know, the door. Because, yeah, it would make sense. Like, why would she come out of the basement to hide in a room when she could have just walked on, you know? I guess she would have had to at some point. Like, she had to have, you know, her probably first thought was to get some kind of disguise, really. So she was, you know, attempting to lead someone in. It just happened it was Hitch. but yeah. So yeah, she was hearing Armin and Hitch, and that was the only two that she ever mentioned. So I could be a bit going far-fetched with this idea that, is it because those are two people that she cares about, or is it just for the fact of, like, basically the only people who ever really came to see her were Hitch and Annie, and therefore those are the only two that she ever heard because they were that close? Because it could be just as simple as that, I guess. Because I don't think there would be any reason for anyone else to really go see her. Yeah, I don't think so. So yeah, maybe it is just as simple as this. They were close enough and talking to her. So, yeah. Yeah, so then we got a backstory. So she was abandoned as a baby. And that actually came from the fact that her parents, one of them was actually an Eldian, and the other a Malian. So that was, yeah, that was new information. And then obviously she got picked up by her current father, which I don't know. We might have got his name at some point, but he picked him up because apparently he was. I think this was said, like, he was actually subject to the same thing. Like, he was abandoned as well for the same reason. I think that's what it said, but correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, and then we obviously got that, like, the whole thing of him training Annie and everything like that. And it's interesting, obviously, knowing all of this now, because the whole, like, sort of little tidbits that we did get with her, and her memories all the way back in, like, season 1 is, like, so vague that you're kind of like, God, what the fuck is going on here? Like, why is it that she is so, like, you know what I mean? Like, she, because the way that her story was lining up was almost the fact that, like, she was, you know, not dying, like, she didn't want to die kind of, like, out of spite. But then, like, when it looked like Eren was going to kill her, like, it immediately, like, shot back to, like, and I think the one that we saw was, you know, please come home kind of thing, like that one. And then, but then that's all you get, and so you're kind of stuck there thinking, like, wait a minute, what does that mean? Like, I thought she didn't like this father, right? I thought she didn't like like her father and whatnot, and then it turns, and then you never get anything until now. So it's been a long time coming, but the idea was that because obviously, you know, he was the one that took her in, but basically didn't really raise her as a father would, but instead basically spent all the time like basically hardening her up, you know, like making her tough to basically live in a world that is fucked, and so that she doesn't need to fight with a weapon, which is, you know, it's commendable in that regard, but you can understand why, like, the idea, like, she was basically bred to be a weapon herself, in which case she has no emotion, and it's the reason why, and therefore she never had any real, you know, she didn't have any regard for life and everything because of that, including her own. She was never brought up to be that way inclined, like she never really learned to love anyone or anything, so she wasn't really taught that way of life, so it makes sense. But then it's like when all of that, I guess if you grow up for that amount of time with a parent or something that doesn't give you that sort of parental love in that way, you just see them as all this, like, almost as just like somebody who's forcing you to do this thing daily. You never see any change in the way that they act, and then all of a sudden he changes, he gets on his hands and knees and he begs and he cries, and it's like it's obviously it's hit her hard, and therefore that's become basically her only real like thing, like basically her reason for living. So, you know, it totally, yeah, it makes sense. And I'll be honest, like I think he probably did get shot and died there, because I think that's probably Annie's into the world, like, now, like, that's her sort of, that's where her character goes, because that's the thing, is like, if it was just as simple as her leaving to get back to her father, and her father was alive and everything, and here comes the rumbling, it's kind of like, well, where like, that would kind of be the end of her story, really, wouldn't it? Because I'd imagine she'd get back there, she'd probably turn into the female Titan, grab her father and leg it the fuck out of there before the rumbling got there, right? Like, that's how I'd think it would. And then because Annie doesn't really have any like regard for anybody else, it would just be like they would just go live on their own somewhere, and that would be that. But I think the idea that if she's like, if he's been killed off, then I think it kind of forces Annie in a direction to be kind of directly involved with the current story, and not just kind of go off into the wilderness and never to be seen again. Because Armin, I mean, that whole thing, yeah, with Armin is interesting, because we've never really seen him lose, like, I mean, we've seen him lose sort of control desperately in the past, where, like, he's kind of, you know, but, like, he's really stood up anyway since he was chosen over Erwin to inherit the Colossal Titan and whatnot, right? And I think this is, like, the first time where we've truly seen it, like, it's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, because there's so much shit going on, and he can only handle certain things at a certain, like, you know, so much at once. And you've got the whole thing of, like, do we truly know what Eren's doing? Like, why is he hiding it from us and everything? But then you've heard the reasons why he's doing it, and then it's like, well, you know, it's all this, like, internal conflict going on in his head mentally of shit going on, and then he's got to think about, you know, what's going on with the fucking, you know, the, like, you know, are Hanji and Levi still alive? Connie's fucked off with Falco, I've got to go after him. Like, there's so much shit that almost, like, everyone's, like, looking to him. And Mikasa, you know, she's always been, like, a kind of a character to just kind of follow around and not really have her own desire on things. I feel like the only time she's, like, even, like, the only time she's ever really inclined to go out and do stuff herself, even then it's always for Eren. So it's not like, you know, her basically asking, like, what should I do? And it's like Armin's got all this stuff that he's thinking about that he has to do and everything, and how does he go about it and whatnot? And then he just hears Mikasa say, well, what do I do? And it's like, I don't know, like almost like, what do you want from me? Like, it's really kind of getting to him, and the fact that he literally says that, like, I was the wrong choice, he chose the wrong person, should have brought Erwin back, is it's crazy. And it's again, it's another one of those times where I remember saying this sometime, like, you know, earlier in this season, like in the first half of season 4 at some point, like thinking, like, imagine if Erwin was here. Like, what would be what would he think? What would we be doing, you know? Like, because Erwin was so switched on in terms of like leadership and everything like that. It would just be interesting to see what his take on the current world would be. But, you know, the thing is, I don't think Armin has been told or anything in regards to when Erwin, like, you know, he was ready to go out. You know, he was ready to kind of leave it. So I don't know, man. What else? Yeah, so Shardis, when he did actually get kicked the living shit out of, those episodes, like, when was it? Like, about, it was just at the back end of the first half, right? Like episode 14 or something like that. It was probably around there. But the reason why he actually allowed it to happen, he basically allowed it to happen. He allowed himself to get kicked the living shit out of because he wanted, he thought that the cadets could only really look out for themselves, and if they would ever go against the Jaegerists, then they would basically just, you know, be purged, as he likes to put it. But I mean, when he said that those people, like the sort of like the old guard or whatever, would basically be purged, I was thinking, I don't know if they would. But then looking at the way that Flock is kind of acting, it makes me think that maybe he's right. Because it's kind of like, you know, the way that Flock is kind of acting is maniacal to me. Like, it just seems like he's an absolute maniac. And the way that he's sort of, I don't know, like, it seems to me like he's enjoying what he's doing, you know? Which isn't right. Because, I don't know. It seems like the way that he is telling, like, this, like, I don't know. He's leading this whole thing, like, almost like he's the one that, like, has the power. You know what I mean? Because Aaron's basically away doing his own thing now. It's kind of like, well, Flock's now in charge. And he's enjoying the whole thing. But the way that he's putting it across seems like it's way worse than what actually should be happening. You know? Like, I mean, it's not good what Aaron's doing anyway. You know what I mean? Like, it's basically just genocide of the whole world. I get that. But it's like, what is going on at home is a whole different thing. Because the thing is, Paradise is like, that's the one place in the world that Aaron is not he's not destroying, right? So whatever happens there internally matters. So I think, like, when you have this, you know, this guy with a fucking, like, with Flock, with almost like, that seemingly got this, like, complex over people that he wants to basically, you know, put it out there that he's in charge. It's like, you know, he doesn't, I don't know, man. He's kind of, it's kind of a psychopath, I think. It seems to me like he's enjoying it way too much. So I can only gauge that going forward, we're looking at a rebellion or a civil war really cropping up here. I know that there was a story, like, or like there was, when we were talking about, you know, what happened with the aliens like so many years ago, from like the Malian side or whatever, there was it was either that or it was when Eren found his dad's notes. But there was a whole thing with like a civil war that broke out, right, at some point. And when like some of the aliens actually started to work for the Malian side and whatnot, and then it like kind of like broke out. It just feels like, you know, it's somewhat going to be a similar thing, I feel like, on Paradis, because I think that's the way that, you know, the story goes. If you remember when I talked about this idea of once Eren was away, I don't know what happens in the story past this point, because I couldn't really think of, like, well, what could happen other than the fact of, like, well, there has to be something that gives in terms of they're not going to allow Eren to just basically kill off the whole world. So I feel like there could be, you know, in a struggle here. I mean, you're already seeing it mostly with Jean, I think, because obviously he was there and witnessed Flock do his thing, and Flock was like, "No, don't you understand? Like, this is it. Like, you don't have to fight anymore. You know what I mean? You're basically one of the heroes. You can just, you know, You can do what you always really wanted to do, and that was live life peacefully on the inside. But as I said, like, he's a changed guy from then on. But you could see, like, in his eyes, like, he was just like, fuck, like, this is it, it's over. Like, I can, you know. But I guess there's always going to be that sort of, like, PTSD thing there, and is it really over? Is it really? It's never going to be over till it's over. And so, for that reason, I feel like even though Jean is really conflicted, I don't see Jean going to that point. I don't see Jean just giving it all up and saying, yep, it's over. I can now just chill and relax. There was also a look that Onyankopon gave him, and I can't read it, what it means. I can't read what his look means, if it's like a look of kind of... Because it was a pretty blank look that he gave him. And I guess if you're looking at it as like Onyankopon almost being like... I don't know, because I don't know if Onyankopon would be like that, but like, you know, of acceptance. I don't think that's the case. Because I guess you could read it from two things, right? You could read it as Jean reading Onyankopon's face, or Onyankopon reacting to Jean's face. What is it that it's entailing there? I'm almost looking at it as Onyankopon trying to give Jean a message, basically saying like, no, that's not the way this goes. Like, you don't, you know, that's not the way you are now, you know? You don't rest. As opposed to like Jean, because that's the other thing, is like, if Jean's looking at Onyankopon and thinking like he's given up the idea and accepted the whole thing that Eren's going to destroy the rest of the world, and therefore his homeland and his family and everything like that are going to die along with it. I don't know. I don't think... But then it could be a thing of like, just, you know, just kind of lay low, and then when the time comes, because that's the other thing, Shardis basically said that. He said, like, you just go along with it, you fit in, and then when the time comes, then you can act out. But, so, like, it's kind of Shardis, he's laying a kind of a seed there that's like, this isn't going to continue, you know? But it's like, this idea that, because I can't... This is the reason why, like, I'm so... Because I know what Eren's doing is bad. But I've always said, like, I can't... Like, the alternative is what? They wait to get trampled themselves. And it's like, well, there isn't really a choice then. But then you see Flock, the way that he's acting. He's almost like Flock is acting and trying to, like, lead this whole thing with an iron fist. And I can't imagine Eren enjoying the idea of that. Like, liking that, you know? So, I don't know, man. I don't know. But yeah, so there was the fucking the thing at the end, in the basically the credits, where we actually saw Connie, who was riding along with Falco, and Falco has actually woken up now. So yeah, this is where sort of Connie's inner conflict comes in as well, because there's bound to be that moment, right, where, because Falco is alive and talking to him and everything, and he's already thanked him now, and it's already clicked, like, that whole thing of, like, you know, if he's with him long enough, talking things through and whatnot, it's going to be harder and harder for Connie to bring himself to do it. But you can understand why he wants to do it. But it's like, it's not going to get there. There's no way Connie's mother is becoming the Jaw Titan. It's not going to happen. And if it does, well, fuck. You know, that'll probably be the biggest shock ever. Because I mean, what? I just don't see it. So, there's going to be that, obviously, conflict that Connie's going to have to come to terms with. I mean, we know that Armin's chasing him down now. So, you know, I mean, that's the thing, is like, what I think is going to happen is the sort of inner conflict that Connie's going to have with himself about whether or not he can do it is going to hold him up long enough for Armin to get there. And then from then on, it's like, you know, because, I don't know, would Connie die? I don't know, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know, man. It could be, but, because this is a thing, is like, Falco's back now, and he can turn into the Jaw Titan as long as he's injured, right? So there's things that can happen where he can turn into the Jaw Titan before he gets eaten or whatever, and Connie being that close, it could turn bad, but we'll have to see. But Falco basically had said, like, in his sort of inner monologue, that he had seen him before. So that obviously has to be through Emiya's memories from when she had the Jaw Titan. And that's the thing, is like, I think that's where the internal conflict will start, because if they start talking to each other and Falco starts bringing up memories of that he has, that's coming through from when Emiya was the Jaw Titan and whatnot, like, that's going to be what'll hold them up, I think. So yeah, interesting. Other than that, I think that's pretty much kind of like all I've got. People did die from the wall, and then you had people that were basically calling out, basically saying, no, Eren's the one that's killed, like my son or my family, whatever. But it's like it's again, it's that thing. You had the one guy basically coming out and saying, well, the alternative was that they would end up dying anyway, because the rest of the world would come here and destroy us. And again, it's that thing of basically no choice. The best alternative for them. That's the thing, is that's why the inner conflict is so hard for these characters, because the dilemma is, it's like it's a non-choice. I mean, I guess it could be a choice if you're willing to just die for it, but like, you get what I mean. Genocide of the entire world, or we get killed. That's the choice. And so, looking from the Paradisians, the better alternative is what Eren is doing, And really, I mean, I guess you could never dictate like when things were going to happen. And obviously, Eren was keeping things under wraps, so he couldn't warn people ahead of time, like, and the shit that went down, he could never warn people anyway. So, it's shit that basically happened like right then. Things had to be done like in a space of time that was, you can't get people evacuated away from the walls enough to save everybody. So, it was basically an impossible situation, But I did like that, like, Hitch was there. She was at the because she's always been that character, like, all the way back in, like, after that fight between Eren and Annie, she was like the one there that was basically her job, and things that, like, haven't changed, and you can tell that, like, just like, she's sick of it, like, it never ends. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think that Gabi, obviously, she was obviously on the Zeppelin as well, and I think obviously Annie being there. So, I can imagine Annie and Gabi meeting up, probably on the same Zeppelin or whatnot, and then we'll get like sort of their story when they get back, and whatnot. But oh no, she didn't, man. What am I talking about? Of course, Gabi didn't. She's fucking with Armin, man, isn't she? Sorry, my bad. I'm an idiot. I don't know why I thought that. Why did I think that Gabi? No, of course not. My bad. I'm an idiot. So yeah. Anyway, that is all I've got. So. Because I know what Eren's doing is bad, but I've always said, like, I can't, like, the alternative is what? Because I know what Eren's doing is bad, but I've always said, like, I can't, like, the alternative is what?